Lesson 6 is on dividing rational numbers. So to start off with, we're going to take a look at decimals. To divide with decimals, we have to make the second number a whole number. So this is very important right here. The second number that you're dividing has to be a whole number. So we're going to have to slide the decimal places. And once we figure out how many places we need to slide the decimal in the second number, that's how many we have to slide it in the first number. So for an example here, 12.5 divided by 32.4, the second number is 32.4. So to make a whole number, I would have to slide it over 1. So then I have to do that same thing to the front number. And then it becomes 125 divided by 324. And then for one more example, 9.4 divided by 15.64, that second number would have to go over 2 spots. So then I have to move this one over 2 spots, but then there's not a number there, so I have to fill in that space with a 0. So that would become 940 divided by 1564. So for example here, the volume of water in Sean's pool is changing by negative 0.05 of a gallon per hour due to a leak. How many hours will it take for the volume of the water in the pool to change by a total of negative 0.3 of a gallon? We need to know how many negative 0.05 are in negative 0.3. So we are going to take the total that we want to know. It's going to total change by the negative 0.3, and we're going to divide that by the negative 0.05. So our second number, our decimal would have to go over twice. So then our decimal would have to go over twice in the first number. So now we would actually have 30, negative 30 divided by 5. And 30 divided by 5 would be 6. And a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So how many hours will it take? Well, oh, sorry. I just realized I forgot to carry this negative sign down here with the 5 because it doesn't make sense to have negative 6 hours. So they're both negative, so the answer is going to be positive. And the question was, how many hours will it take for the volume of the water in the pool to change by negative 0.3? And it will take 6 hours for that much water to leak out. And for our second example, it says Rebecca's bank statement shows a change of negative $1.50 in her account each week. How many weeks will it take before the total change is negative $12? So the total that we have is negative 12, and we're going to have to divide that by negative $1.50. But I'm not going to write that 0 at the end because negative 1.50 is the same thing as negative 1.5. And having that 0 on the end is just adding another spot to move that decimal over, and it's going to make our numbers bigger. And we don't want to have bigger numbers if we don't have to have bigger numbers. So if I leave it negative 1.5, I just have to slide the decimal once. Well, negative 12, remember the decimal is at the very end, and we have to slide it over once. So that would be negative 120 divided by negative 15. So if you're unsure of how many 15s are in 120, we can do the division. Remember the second number on the outside and the first number under. 15 doesn't go into 1, 15 doesn't go into 12, 15 has to go into 120. So we're going to have to do some guess and check. So I know that 10 times 15 would be 150. So that's too much. And 15 minus taking away from 150 is still going to be too much. So I'm going to try 8 just by using an educated guess. 8 times 5 is 40, so carry the 4. 8 times 1 is 8, plus 4 is exactly 120. So it goes into 120 exactly 8 times. So how many weeks will it take? It will take 8 weeks. Moving on, we're going to take a look at dividing fractions. And the statement that I want you to remember with dividing fractions is keep, change, flip. So what that means is if you had a division problem with fractions, you are going to keep the first number. So in our example here, 1/2 divided by 3/4, We are keeping the 1/2. We are changing that division sign to multiplication, and then we are flipping that 3/4 and making it 4/3. So that's called, it's reciprocal, flipping the fraction. So keep, change, flip. Keep that in your mind. You are going to use that quite often. So my first example here for us to do is -5/2 divided by 3/4. So we're going to keep the -5/2. We're changing this to multiplication, and we're going to flip 3/4 so it's become 4/3. Then we're going to look to see if we can reduce anything. And 5 and 3 have nothing in common, but 2 and 4 are both even, so I'm going to cut them in half. So I'm going to have 1 at the bottom and 2 over here, and then I can multiply across the top. -5 times 2 is -10, and 1 times 3 is 3. So my answer is -10/3, and that's improper because the bigger number is on the top. So we have to make sure we carry over the negative sign, so watch for that. And then how many 3's are in 10? Well, 3 times 3 is 9, so that's as close as I'm going to get. So there's 3 of them, and we're at the number 9. We have to get to 10, so we need 1 more, and then we keep our denominator, the 3. All right, the elevation of a small submarine changes by -3/8 of a mile after each exploration. After how many explorations will the submarine's elevation have changed by -1.5? So the total change is -1.5, so we're going to have to take that, and we're going to divide it by each time it changes by -3/8. So with this one, we're going to have to make the -1.5 improper. So remember, you start at the denominator and you go this way, you go to the left and you multiply. So -2 times 1 is 2, and then we move around to the numerator, which we add. So 2 plus 1 is 3, and our denominator stays the same as 2, and this was a negative, so we keep that negative sign. And then, so that's our keep. Even though we made it improper, we're still keeping it. It's worth the same thing. So that's our keep. Change our division to multiply, and flip the -3/8. So it's -8/3. The negative sign, I always just keep at the top because it's just easier. So if we move it to the bottom, we might forget about it. So I always just leave it there. Now look to see if we can reduce anything. The 3's are on an angle from each other, so they each have a 3 in common, so I'm going to divide them by 3, so they become 1. And then going side to side, 2 and 8 would have a 2 in common, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. 8 divided by 2 would be 4. And then I can multiply straight across. A -1 times a -4 would be a +4. And then 1 times 1 on the bottom would be 1, and 4/1 reduces to just 4. So after how many explorations was the question? So this is going to be 4 explorations.